Yes.
Sure. Thanks. I heard you read out what Rupert Colville had said about the alleged child rapes in Central African Republic, but I read it all, and it didn't answer some of the questions that are public about it, which include the following. The Central African Republic authorities have said that they only learned of these events and charges by reading The Guardian. And so what I wanted to know is, it seems pretty extraordinary that the UN would collect evidence of rape in a host country in that case. Was it not provided? Is that true that it wasn't provided to the home country people? Also, it's reported that there similar allegations are against peacekeepers, quote unquote, from Chad and Equatorial Guinea, and I don't see that addressed in his statement. My question is the UN equally satisfied or happy with the follow-through by those two countries? And finally, he talked about an OIOS investigation of Mr. Compass, but he's previously confirmed in writing a prior OIOS investigation of Mr. Compass for leaking to Morocco about Western Sahara. And I wanted to know, does the UN feel any responsibility? If the leaking to France is as bad as Mr. Colville says, why was nothing done about the first leaking to Morocco, and what's the status of that investigation?
Both investigations are underway, where we, of course, in terms of what response we would have, would rely on what happens when each of those investigations are completed. Those are separate issues, one involving Western Sahara and one involving Central African Republic. And we'll have to wait the results of each. Now, in terms of the Chadians and Equatorial Guineans, we've seen these reports. The information that we have was handed over to the French authorities, and therefore that investigation would need to go to them. As you may be aware, there were, I believe, Chadian and Equatorial Guinean troops in the precursor to the UN force, what was called at that point MISCA. Neither of those contingents wound up in the UN mission, MINUSCA. And I believe neither of them was rehatted, in other words, as UN contingents.
Right, but if the UN...
and your first question...
What authorities?
Oh,
and if not, why not?
Right now, Rupert has been handling, as you have seen, questions about the timeline. And as he made clear, some of the questions about the timeline are pending the results of the actual investigation into this. So he's been trying to provide as much details on that. But certainly the idea was to provide the information to the people who could prosecute the people who we thought may have done wrong in this case.
But thanks a lot. Whether or not the Equatorial Guinean and Chadian forces remained in MINUSCA, if the UN heard allegations of child rape by those forces, doesn't the UN then at least tell the country, if not the host country, of the children that were abused?
I've not, I can't comment on the evidence that was collected. I'm not aware of the extent of evidence that was shared, and I don't know whether it includes these nationalities or not. That will become clearer as the course of these investigations proceed. So I would have to wait until those investigations have been done.
One more on press freedom. I want to ask you this because it's talked about a lot in this room. There's a paragraph of Mr. Colville's statement where he says he expresses extreme concern that an unredacted copy of the report has been given to media, urges media what to do with it. But he also says, as his example, that reporters have contacted some of the victims. And what I wanted to know is, on what basis does he believe that's from the report? Is the UN saying, don't actually investigate this case, which some people believe the UN or the French covered up for 9 months? Is the message to reporters, don't speak to people that claim they've been victimized, or don't use the report to speak to them?
The message is what he actually said.
Okay.
So I would go back to what his words were, which I have in front of me.
A person named in the documents was contacted, but the question is, how does he know why they were contacted?
His concern is that the names of these children is out there in the public. It's obvious that it's out there because people are contacting them.
But there are reporters who actually can find victims without the UN report. So how does he know that they didn't do it?
It's possible that they've done it a different way. Our priority is to protect children. Children who, at the end of the day, live in the Central African Republic and could face danger and repercussions. Please stop talking over me while I'm giving you the answer.
Because the question,
no. I'm sorry. This is not a debate. This is a briefing. No, seriously.
Okay, I have another question. If you finish what you say, then I'm going to ask a question. Because you just said...
You must have been the most obnoxious child. Matthew,
I just don't...
You're asking a question, you're talking over me while I answer.
Please,
That's
answer.
not how briefings go.
I asked questions yesterday you haven't answered yet.
Yeah.
What happened in conference room 3? Do you have an answer to that?
Yeah, I'll get that back to you, but you still haven't let me answer the question that I'm
Please.
doing. You seem actually more interested in talking over me than in getting the answer. The answer, what was it again? Now
Did you tell Central African Republic about the rape charge?
The point is that they told it to the authorities who were in a position to actually deal with the question of wrongdoing. So that is where the report went. Regarding Rupert Colville, which is what we were talking about before you rudely interrupted me several times, his concern is that these children, who are in a very dangerous country, their names are now out in the public, and it's obvious that their names are now in the public because these reporters are contacting them for whatever reason, and the worry is a worry about their safety.
This was the question that I was asking.
For God's sake,
you said you would finish, and I'd ask a question.
No,
it's a very
I
simple
had
question.
actually.
It's a very simple question.
Can I ask a question on this?
Ladies and gentlemen,
Did the UN
is there a point for me to continue with this if he's going to keep on like this? I leave it to
I came
you.
here with a question.
One of your colleagues is shaking her head
Oh,
no.
well, I'm sure you can find. Let's take a poll then. I just want to ask you a question.
Let's take a poll.
Yeah, please do. Please do. On World Press Freedom Day, I have a question.
No.
And this is the question. Can I say it?
First of all, press freedom has to do with your rights to go about your work. Mm-hmm. You're actually constraining other people's right to go about their work by shutting me down. You realize that, right? There are other reporters in this room who are not you.
Sure, I understand that.
All right, and
So
you respect their
the
right to
question that I
receive
asked you, I still
information
have an answer.
without hearing some other guy talking from the crowd over me, right?
It's a yes or no question. Did the UN tell the Central African Republic authorities of the rape of their citizens, and if not, why not? That's it.
As I've said, the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights is trying to prepare the timeline. As Rupert has made clear from Geneva today, some of that remains pending an investigation. I would have to urge you to wait for the result of that investigation to go out. Regarding your question about Conference Room 3, we got back to them. This was not an event that was organized by the United Nations. We didn't have any control over the event, so I would urge you to talk to the sponsors of that. This was a member state-run event, and it will be up to them how those arrangements were put in place. Yes?
Yes. I don't want to belabor it, but I will. I think the important question to ask on the abuse in Central African Republic is whether these pedophiles, whether they're French, Chadian, Guinean, are still in the country running around loose, or have they been transferred to wherever? And you may not know the answer immediately, but can you please find out? Because that's much more important than who said what to whom.
Regarding that, I mean, I have no information on the innocence or guilt of the various contingents. So I will. So first of all, I'm not going to presume to know the truth behind the allegations. Having said that, the troops from Chad and Equatorial Guinea were not rehatted. Chad withdrew from MISCA before the UN mission MINUSCA was established. The rehatting of Equatorial Guinea was not approved by UN peacekeeping. And according to the African Union, former MISCA troops were under investigation for involvement in human rights violations. The UN Security Council has also called on the AU and relevant troop contributing countries to investigate. So that is the case with those. With France, we have turned over the information to the French authorities in July of last year, and we have been informed that the French authorities then started an investigation by the end of July of last year. So that investigation is underway.
Whether these pedophiles are still on the scene, or whether France has taken them home. Because remember the Central African Republic case of a few years ago. France moved like lightning to lock them up, to lock the person up. Yeah.
The Sangaris troops are not our troops, so we wouldn't be able to speak for what has happened to those individuals.
They're still on the scene.
Those individual soldiers. The French authorities are the ones investigating. They're the ones who have the information, and they'll be the ones to let you know what happened to these particular. What?
This back and forth and cutting off and statements instead of questions is fine. However.
You were talking over me before I could answer. Okay. She actually let me answer. That's actually the way questions and answers work in the future. Yes.